mid cap, just to make you all understand in terms of the category how it is. So market caps, we have companies based on market caps. The top 100 companies are obviously large caps. The middle bucket, which is 101 to 250, is the mid cap segment. And if you look at that in terms of the allocation which it has across, if you look at the entire 500 stocks that we have in BSE 500, the allocation is only close to 18%, and this hasn't really changed. But what has really changed is the market cap, which has actually widened. So when we were in 2017, when this entire classification came through in large, mid and small, the market cap range was somewhere close to 8,500 to 30,000. Now that has actually broadened substantially to almost be from 22,000 to 65,000. Now obviously it's a much larger range. But what I'm just trying to highlight is that as a segment, this space, the market cap range has broadened, and that has actually almost doubled in the last 6 years. So which makes it a very lucrative space. Why? Because the earnings growth really has come to substantially in this space, which has led to the appreciation in terms of market cap also. Now if we look at mid cap, what happens is that if we have a large cap category, okay, so large cap in terms of the sectors that it really caters to, there is a lot of I would say aliens towards sectors like financial services, oil and gas, IT. All these are very large sectors in the large cap space. But when you come to mid cap, what happens is that there is an entire basket of sectors which are smaller regional banks, retail companies, hotel chains. All of these they actually form a very large part of the mid cap bucket. So they actually give you a much diversified opportunity, which probably is not available in the large cap because there's a lot of concentration in terms of sectors over there. But at the same time, in the mid cap, you get this entire basket, which is inclusive of healthcare, hospitals, chemicals, which probably is a bit limited in the small caps, in the large cap space. And in the small cap also, the size is too small for anybody to be really wanting to invest in that. So it's somewhat a complementary to a large cap where you can get a diversification in terms of the spectrum of sectors that you can cater to. So as I said, there are these broad spectrum of sectors, stocks that you can actually choose from, which are only there in the mid cap space. And now that we have been speaking so much of certain themes which are likely to play out over the next 4-5 years, I've just listed out a few themes which can actually drive a lot of potential in terms of earnings, in terms of growth, in terms of companies which can really pan out over here. And most of the sectors and themes that you watch here, in the listed space, you will only find the names in the mid cap space. So that is something which really plays out very well from a aspect of mid cap. Also, one very important thing in mid caps is that you're seeing that a lot of while we look at we think that large companies will be in the large caps, right? But there are many leaders you can actually see only in the mid cap space. So the largest tire company is a mid cap, the largest hotel chain is a mid cap, the largest probably chemical company now is a mid cap only, the largest home building material company in terms of pipes, in terms of durable company, they are also mid caps. So what I'm just trying to highlight here is that these leaders of today, which have been which are really sitting in the mid cap space, eventually the growth that we're likely to see because of India's growth story that can really play out, these companies have the potential to become much larger in their name. But what I'm just trying to highlight here is that there are category leaders that we are seeing in terms of revenue, which are mainly present in the mid cap space. And all of this, if you see, like while I've spoken about all the good things about mid cap, I've spoken about how you're seeing that entire earnings growth really come through. That is also reflected in the performance of the mid cap space as such, where we are seeing the risk adjusted returns of mid cap being much higher over a longer term period. If we see last 3 years could be an aberration because we've seen that small caps have really performed very well, but still nonetheless they have given very strong kind of returns. Sorry, what is this happening? Yeah, I'm so sorry for this. so while the returns have been very strong here, what I also want to highlight is that they're not all companies which become mid cap can even can transition to becoming a large cap, right? There are only a few, almost around 17-18% of companies actually from mid cap to who become a large cap, or from small who become mid. What typically happens is that a mid cap company can also become a small cap company. So what really is important to understand and to note is that you need to have a real framework in place so that you can actually sorry, so that you can actually see as to how, yeah, thanks. So you can actually see and build and be invested in those names which can be leaders and which can actually help drive growth in the future. So what at Bandhan, what I typically try and do is follow a framework to identify names which can really place very well in the mid cap space, which can help get the benefit of compounding and help benefit of re-rating as well. So this is the fair framework that we talk about in most of our the way we look at it is that first thing we need to look whenever we look at in terms of inclusion in the portfolio, we need to really be understanding of the risk parameters in that. So risk containment plays a very important role. And how do we define risk? Risk is in terms of what capital allocation policies the companies have, how the management quality is. These are basic checks that we would typically do on any company, but this helps drive a much longer term view of the business, because you don't really want to be invested in companies where there will be a risk of the company to some regulatory challenges, technological changes. There is no predictability of the business, and that's why you don't want to be invested in those businesses, because today you might take a call on that, but somewhere down the line you might have to face the risk of that being obsolete to some extent. So you don't want to be in that part of the business. So that's why you want to be invested, and when you want to be in a business, you want to see the growth really come through, and that's where you first and the foremost thing is you need to be very cognizant of the fact of the risk aspect of it. That is defined by, when I said sustainability of the business, the long-term longevity of the business, and the governance aspect, which is determined by the management track record, the capital allocation policies that they have in place. Second, third and fourth factor, which is capital efficiency, edge and the scalability, are more towards growth and quality investing, and my fund which I manage has some bit of a tilt towards growth and quality. So how do you define so capital efficiency, for example? So capital efficiency, when we look at businesses to invest in, what we try and do is we want to invest in businesses which have, on a structural basis, can drive an optimal ROIC. So ROIC is basically your return which you are getting out of the capital that you've invested in the business. You don't want to be investing in a business which has a suboptimal ROE. So what really happens is that when you invest in businesses and when they grow, either the surplus EVA, which we call it as, either you return it to the shareholders, or you invest them for further growth. So, but the investment for growth has to definitely be at a better return profile, and that's where we think that value creation over a longer period of time can really play through. So capital efficiency plays a very important role when we talk about growth investing. Secondly, competitive edge. As a business, what really happens is that you are providing any service or a product to a customer. You're trying to solve a customer's problem, whichever business you would be. How do you try and solve that problem? You're either solving it through some product differentiation that you're giving. Or you're giving it through some cost advantage that you can provide, or you're giving it some or through some pricing advantage that you can give through. So all of this effectively means that there is some sort of advantage that you are driving and giving it to the client and solving the client's problems or the customer's problem. But all of this has to be should be at a profitable level, because you might be giving all these services, or you might be giving all these, you might have this competitive edge, but if you're not profitable enough, then you're not going to create a very strong customer franchise. So that is where the focus is, that what are the, and hence because of this you're creating entry barriers into the business. So that is where your competitive edge really plays a very strong role. And last is scalability, which is a very strong form of growth investing, where you're looking at the entire addressable market, whether the business has kind of demonstrated the capability through kind of leveraging their existing competencies to drive a much larger basket of gamut of addressable market that they can cater to. And that is where you can actually see the earnings growth, which can really play out, and the earnings growth eventually compounds, and that also to some extent because you're investing in different businesses but at the same time being capital efficient when I spoke about ROE, and that's when you are actually driving a long-term growth for the business. You can drive substantial re-rating in a particular company. All of this obviously because growth is there, quality is there, it's not going to be coming at any cheap pricing. So you need to manage that risk reward in a very strong fashion. You don't want to overpay for businesses. You don't want to be in businesses which do not have the potential to drive earnings growth. So that's why it's really important to be in discipline in terms of the risk reward that you're driving, and constantly and continuously keep evaluating that. So this is the kind of framework we have that for the 65% of the portfolio, because this is a mid-cap portfolio. The requirement is that minimum 65% has to be invested in the mid-cap stock. So this is the kind of strategy that we have for inclusion of stocks into the mid-cap part of the portfolio, and where we kind of do a buy and a hold sort of a strategy. For the remaining part, which is the 35%, it can be invested in large cap, it can be invested in small, or it can have a component of cash. For the large and the small, again we want to be following this sort of a framework. We want to be having businesses owning businesses which are not really present in that 150 stock bucket, and then hence we have to look for it outside, and which could be the next levers of growth in the entire life cycle. So I've just given a few examples of companies on these five parameters. Maybe we'll share this presentation with you so you all can go through that. I've spoken about an auto ancillary company called Minda. I've spoken about a healthcare company which is yeah, sure. Yeah, so I can talk about Minda. Minda is an auto ancillary company. What it does is it provides it for the longest of time it has a very diversified mix in terms of the segments that it caters to. So two-wheelers, four-wheelers, it's got a kind of a 50-50. So again, a mix is balanced. In terms of the customer concentration, also not very large. It's again diversified. So it's catering to a wide aspect of customers, and more importantly, in terms of the segments that it is into. What it does is, like, let me just go through these five framework that I spoke about. So governance, sustainability. What they're doing is, what had happened in Minda was that it is a small company, but at the same time, what they've done is because of technological developments which have happened, they have done a lot of tie-ups and a lot of JVs with global companies so that they can get the benefit of that technology. So this was creating a lot of confusion in the minds of an investor as to how and when and where, when this JV will become a subsidiary, when something else will happen, who will acquire. There was a lot of confusion, and what they decided was they want to simplify the structure of the group. So they did a lot of they acquired a lot of entities. They merged a lot of subsidiaries with the company. So that itself reflects that the governance aspect, the allocation aspect that they're doing is working pretty strongly for them. That's in terms of the governance and the sustainability of the business, because they kept on doing new JVs and partnerships for growth of the business. So that again gives you a confidence, and again they were not really as of now there is this entire wave of EV etc, but when there wasn't, they were not in any of the segment which was at a threat to any technology change which was happening. So again gives you confidence on the sustainability of the business. From a capital efficiency point of view, as I said, the capex which they would win, or the JVs that they would do, was in lieu of the tie-ups that they would get orders from their customers, be it domestic customers, global customers, and that's how they would do these tie-ups. Sometimes they would scout for JV partners, sometimes the customer itself would come and tell them that why don't you tie up with this company, because we know that they are kind of doing good. And hence the only way they would incrementally do investment is when they would have the orders in place, and not without just putting up the capex and then going and scouting for customers. So that clearly indicates that they want to do investments only when they see that the ROE on the investment is actually beneficial for them. In terms of the edge, they have these, as I said, they have very strong relationships with a lot of these larger OEs, and that helps them, kind of get these tie-ups for improving the content per vehicle that we keep speaking about. Because in an auto bank, what happens is that you are looking at improvement in the way to grow is either you keep adding new customers, or within the existing customer you give them more and more products, different products. So that is what they kept on tried to do, and that which created an entry barrier in the segments that they were catering to, and which created a competitive edge and advancement for them. In terms of scalability, as I said, they kept targeting newer customers, they kept getting into newer segments. So they were only into switches, they were into lights, they got into alloy wheels, which was a completely new segment for them. They did tie-ups, they were looking at import substitution as a way, because alloy wheels is used to be mostly imported from China. So they were looking at that as an entire new segment for them, and for which they did kind of tie-ups. And this, when I speak about scalability, which is what they're trying to do, is leverage their relationship with customers and give more and more kind of products and increase the content for them. And lastly, business, why it got re-rated is because of the fact that there was whenever there was a change in the technology. As I said, alloy wheels, maybe if you would have thought about it 10 years back, alloy wheels was not something which was anyways being part of any of the cars that are present today or two-wheelers that are present today. But over the years, because of these changes which are happening in terms of the technology, they had these tie-ups, and which helped them drive the growth in the business, and hence help them re-rate the business. So what I'm just trying to highlight here is that, this is just sort of a summary for one company that we do, but we try and do that for each and every company that is a part of the portfolio. And what really plays out over here in terms of the framework that I spoke about, is that there was an opportunity in the business to scale it for them. They did it through their partnerships, they did it through more customer diversification. Now they're also into EVs. When I spoke about in the beginning, they were not, but they realized that this is something which is going to be the future. So we want to be in the space. They have got a very strong order book for electric vehicles, both in the domestic as well as in the export market. So I've just given a couple of other examples also, which we can share this slide, the deck across with you, so that you can kind of have a look at it. There's a pipe company which I spoke about as Astral. There's another hospital company which is Max Health, again over there driving good. I don't know why this is stopped again. Yeah. So in terms of how our portfolio currently looks like, and the top themes that I said that we are really very positive on and are trying to position ourselves over there, is the way we look at it is energy transition, power shortage, and we're trying to be in that entire renewable story, which will be a story for the next 5-10 years at least. The electrification story, the domestic manufacturing story, either be it through import substitution, or through PLI, or through the China Plus One. So that is something that we want to play through, and then there will be specific niches that we want to really target. So that's how our the top 15, we're not having a very concentrated portfolio, because the market has actually broadened, and which is also giving an opportunity to invest in an entire array of sectors, array of companies to invest in, and that's why we're not really as of now running a very concentrated portfolio. But if we do get a chance, and if the market kind of narrows a bit, then we would love to have a concentrated portfolio. As of now, the top 15-17% 15 holdings of a company account for almost 38-39%. So yeah, we're like kind of overweight, and this is just a repetition of what I had indicated. Again, this is similar. So yeah, so we are running a diversified portfolio. No one position is going to be more than 5% in our fund, unless there is it really makes a suitable case for it to be having a much larger weight in the fund. And so as of now, it's a more diversified. We're trying to play and trying to be in sectors, in segments where we think that the growth is likely to sustain for a longer period of time. time, because many a times I've been asked this question that mid caps and small caps over the last 1 or 2 years has seen a very sharp rally. Do you think this is likely to sustain? So the answer to that is that, see, anyways, we are investors, and we are investing in the business for a longer term perspective, right? We might have seen that entire re-rating story play out. There could be some pockets where there is still re-rating potential possible, but at the same time, where we're more confident about is the growth aspect. So any stock, for it to kind of give you very good returns, there has to be one element is obviously the re-rating that can drive through. But also the earnings growth which can come through for the company. So earnings growth is something where we are still very positive on in most of the companies that we are invested in, and that's where we think that being in the mid cap, being in the small cap space is something which should be a part of the portfolio, or in terms of the entire basket of products that we would have. It's a complement to kind of your large cap position, because this is while it is less riskier than the small cap, it is in terms of the earnings growth, in terms of the revenue growth, in terms of the stability, it's better as compared to the large cap. So mid cap is somewhere bridging that gap between the small cap and large cap. So this is broadly where we think that this space is something which remains very exciting. A lot of newer companies are getting either being listed and everything is really coming into this space itself. A lot of new sectors which are being curated in this space again, as I said, so which we would probably not have thought of. So this space, I think, is something that should be definitely a part of holdings in terms of the entire, for a customer from a more it will be a bit risky as compared to large caps, but you're getting but as I showed you, the risk adjusted return for a mid cap over a longer period of time has always been higher than even a small cap, which is a much riskier part of the business. But yeah, so that's broadly my pitch around the mid cap fund.